The security guard was standing at my desk like a vulture when I walked back from Nathan Cross's office. Badge already confiscated, cardboard box waiting, my 28 years of blood and sweat about to be reduced to a 10-minute humiliation parade to the parking lot. And the kicker? I just handed that Harvard MBA brat the biggest contract in Pinnacle Industrial Solutions history, Thomas Rodriguez, 52 years old. And I just got a masterclass in how corporate loyalty is a one-way street. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how this whole mess started, because what happened next is going to make your blood boil. 3 months ago, I was sitting in my Denver office when the phone rang. Renewable Energy Dynamics on the line, asking about solar panel manufacturing capabilities. Not just any deal, we're talking $1.8 billion over 5 years. The kind of contract that changes everything. Now, I've been grinding in industrial sales since 1996. Started as a junior rep when Chairman Cross ran things with actual principles. Back then, results mattered. Bring in business, get rewarded. Simple. The place felt like family, and Old Man Cross treated his people right. Then Nathan took over 2 years ago. Daddy's boy with an MBA and zero street experience. At 38, he'd never closed a real deal in his life, never felt the pressure of a mortgage payment riding on commission, never had to look a client in the eye and earn their trust the hard way. Everything had to be disrupted and optimized. Translation: fire experienced people, hire kids who work cheap and think equity options are generous. But I figured this $1.8 billion monster would shut him up and maybe get me that VP promotion I'd been chasing for 3 years. Here's the thing. I needed this deal more than Nathan knew. My wife Maria has been battling cancer for 8 months. Chemotherapy, radiation, specialists who charge more per hour than I used to make in a week. Our daughter Sophia is a senior in high school, dreaming of Colorado State University, and those tuition bills aren't going to pay themselves. So I dove into this renewable energy dynamics opportunity like my family's future depended on it. Because it did. I spent 12-hour days researching everything about their operation, their supply chain, their competition, their quarterly pressure points. I flew to Phoenix, Seattle, and Houston on my own credit card when Nathan's cost optimization froze the travel budget. Missed Sophia's soccer playoffs, skipped anniversary dinners with Maria between her treatments. The client contact was Patricia Wells, their procurement director. Tough as nails, been in the industry 25 years, and sharp enough to spot BS from orbit. She knew our margins better than our own accounting department. But I respected that. We were both professionals doing what needed to be done. Every week I'd update Nathan on progress. He'd sit there scrolling Instagram while I talked, throwing out suggestions that proved he didn't understand our business. Why don't we undercut everyone by 20% and make it up in volume? Real strategic thinking there. The breakthrough came during a dinner meeting in Denver 6 weeks ago. Patricia mentioned their timeline crunch. They needed phase 1 delivery by Q2 next year, and their current vendor was already behind schedule. That's when I realized we had the winning angle. Geography. Pure, simple geography. Our Denver facility was 30 minutes from their installation site. No shipping delays, no weather issues, no logistics nightmares. While Nathan's MBA crowd obsessed over synergistic value propositions, I focused on the obvious advantage staring us in the face. I restructured our entire proposal around speed and reliability. Yes, we were 8% higher than the low bidder, but we guaranteed delivery dates with penalty clauses that showed serious commitment. I put my own reputation on the line with those guarantees. The final presentation was scheduled for Friday, October 15th. I'd been preparing for weeks, rehearsing answers to every possible objection. The night before, I couldn't sleep. Maria kept telling me to relax, that I'd done everything humanly possible, but the weight of everything was crushing me. Patricia's team showed up with 6 people. CFO, head of operations, technical specialists. This wasn't theater. They were ready to make a decision that morning. I walked them through our proposal section by section, answered every technical question, addressed every concern about quality control and delivery schedules. Then came the moment I'd been dreaming about for months. Patricia looked at her team, got confirming nods all around, and turned back to me with a slight smile. Tom, your proposal addresses our primary concerns about delivery reliability and vendor stability. If you can maintain these pricing levels for the full 5-year term, we're prepared to move forward today. I almost couldn't breathe. 28 years of grinding, of proving myself over and over, and this was going to be my legacy deal. The contract that would secure Maria's treatment, pay for Sophia's education, and probably guarantee that VP position I'd been chasing. We shook hands right there in the conference room. Patricia said she'd have final paperwork ready by Monday morning, but the deal was done. $1.8 billion in guaranteed revenue, the biggest single contract in Pinnacle's 40-year history. That weekend felt like a movie. Maria and I actually went out to dinner for the first time since her diagnosis started. Sophia was bouncing off the walls about college possibilities. For 48 hours, the future looked bright, stable, possible. Monday morning, I walked into Nathan's office carrying that signed contract like it was the Holy Grail. All $1.8 billion of it, spread over 5 years of guaranteed revenue. This was my moment. Finally, some recognition for nearly 3 decades of loyalty and results. Nathan barely looked up from his computer when I walked in. Just kept typing like I was interrupting something important. Finally, he glanced at the contract in my hands. Great, just put it on my desk. That should have been my first warning. But I was riding the high of 28 years of work paying off, so I kept talking. This is huge for us, Nathan. Biggest single contract in company history. This puts us ahead of budget for the next 2 quarters, maybe 3. He finally looked at me directly, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Cold, calculating, like he was looking at a problem that needed solving. Actually, Tom, I need to talk to you about something. Close the door. I sat down, still thinking maybe this was about the promotion, maybe a bonus discussion. The contract was right there on his desk, proof of what loyalty and experience could deliver. Instead, Nathan opens a folder and slides it across to me. We're restructuring the sales division. Your position is being eliminated. The words hit me like a physical punch. For a second, I couldn't process what he'd said. What do you mean, eliminated? I just brought you the biggest deal we've ever seen. This isn't about your performance, Tom. It's about efficiency. We're consolidating your accounts under Angela Morrison. She'll be handling all major clients moving forward. Angela Morrison, 29 years old, MBA from Northwestern, Nathan's hand-picked golden child. She'd been at the company exactly 18 months and couldn't close a deal if her life depended on it. But she spoke his language. All that business school garbage about customer journey optimization and stakeholder engagement matrices. You cannot be serious. I just delivered $1.8 billion in revenue, and you're firing me? It's not firing, it's restructuring. And frankly, Tom, your methods are becoming outdated. Angela understands modern sales techniques, digital integration, CRM optimization. She represents the future of our industry. The future of our industry. This from a guy who inherited his corner office and probably couldn't identify a manufacturing facility if it had a neon sign. But arguing was pointless. I could see it in his eyes. The decision was already made, had been made weeks ago, maybe months. And what about my clients? Patricia Wells specifically requested to work with me. These relationships took years to build. Angela will handle the transition. She's already been briefed on the key accounts. Already been briefed. While I was grinding 12-hour days to close this deal, they were planning my exit strategy. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. The severance package was a joke. 6 weeks' pay and health benefits through the end of January. After 28 years of service, of missed family dinners and weekend work sessions, of building the relationships that kept this company profitable, I was worth exactly 42 days of salary. Tom, I'll need your badge and access cards. Security will escort you to collect your personal items. Security, like I was some kind of corporate criminal who might steal office supplies on my way out. The humiliation was complete. That's when the guard showed up at my desk. Professional, but cold, making sure everyone on the floor could see what happened to 28 years of loyalty. I packed up family photos, a coffee mug Sophia made in 8th grade pottery class, a few personal items that suddenly seemed pathetic in that cardboard box. My colleagues watched from their cubicles. Some looked embarrassed, others just turned away. Nobody said anything. That's corporate America. Everyone's too scared for their own job to show basic human decency. The drive home was the longest of my life. How do you tell your cancer-fighting wife that you just lost your job? How do you explain to your college-bound daughter that her dreams might have to wait? Maria was in the kitchen when I walked in at 11:30 a.m. carrying that damn cardboard box. She took one look at my face and knew. What happened? They fired me. Right after I signed the biggest contract in company history, they fired me. She didn't cry. Maria's tougher than that, tougher than me most days. But I saw something break behind her eyes. The security we'd both counted on. The stability that was supposed to get us through her treatment and Sophia's education. We'll figure it out, she said, but her voice was shaky. You're experienced, talented. Someone will recognize that. But we both knew the truth. The job market for 52-year-old sales managers isn't exactly booming. Most companies want younger, cheaper talent who'll work for peanuts and think a 401k match is generous compensation. Sophia came home from school that afternoon excited about something, probably college applications or senior year plans. One look at us sitting at the kitchen table with paperwork spread everywhere, and her excitement died. Dad, what's wrong? Telling your 17-year-old daughter that her college dreams might have to wait because corporate politics matter more than performance. That's a conversation no parent should have to have. The next few weeks were hell. I applied for every sales position in Colorado, sent out hundreds of resumes, networked with every contact I'd built over nearly 3 decades. A few interviews, a lot of polite rejections, mostly silence. Meanwhile, I kept hearing rumors through old colleagues about what was happening at Pinnacle. Angela Morrison was struggling with the renewable energy dynamics account. Patricia Wells wasn't impressed with the handoff, apparently. There were communication breakdowns, missed deadlines, questions about delivery schedules that Angela couldn't answer. Part of me felt vindicated. I'd warned Nathan that relationships matter in this business, that you can't just transfer decades of trust to someone new. But mostly I felt sick watching my life's work get destroyed by incompetence. Then, 6 weeks after my firing, I got a call that changed everything. Carlos Mendez, my old cubicle neighbor who'd somehow survived the latest round of optimizations, called me up, sounding nervous as hell. Tom, you need to know something. Don't repeat this, but there's an investigation going on. Federal agents were here yesterday asking questions about the renewable energy dynamics contract. Federal agents. At Pinnacle. Asking about my contract. What kind of questions? About pricing information, internal communications, who had access to sensitive client data. Tom, I think someone's been selling information to competitors. The pieces started falling into place. My sudden firing, Angela's promotion, the rush to get me out of the building before I could ask questions or notice anything suspicious. Nathan hadn't fired me because I was outdated. He'd fired me because I was a threat. After Carlos hung up, I sat in my living room staring at the phone for 20 minutes. Federal agents investigating my contract, someone selling information to competitors, my firing suddenly making perfect sense in the worst possible way. I called Carlos back an hour later. Tell me everything you heard. Tom, I shouldn't even be talking about this. But they were asking about pricing information, internal emails, who had access to client databases. One agent specifically asked about Angela Morrison and when she got access to your accounts. Angela Morrison. Nathan's golden child who couldn't close a deal but somehow knew enough about modern sales techniques to replace me. The woman who was now handling Patricia Wells and every other relationship I'd spent years building. Did they mention my name? Yeah, but not like you're in trouble. More like they wanted to know about the timing of your firing, whether you had any concerns about information security before you left. That's when it clicked. I wasn't a suspect. I was a victim. Nathan hadn't fired me because I was outdated. He'd fired me because I was the one person who might have noticed something wrong, the one person who knew those clients well enough to spot irregularities. Over the next few days, more pieces fell into place. Carlos fed me information when he could, always careful about where and when we talked. Angela Morrison was struggling with more than just client relationships. She was asking strange questions about competitor pricing, requesting access to historical bid data that wasn't relevant to current deals. And then there was her lifestyle. New BMW in the parking lot, designer clothes that cost more than her monthly salary. Word was she'd bought a condo in downtown Denver's most expensive district, all on a junior sales manager's paycheck. But here's the beautiful part. Remember Patricia Wells, the tough-as-nails procurement director who didn't suffer fools? Well, she didn't get to her position by being naive about corporate politics and information security. When Angela started asking suspicious questions about competitor capabilities and pricing strategies, Patricia got curious, started keeping detailed records of every conversation, Every email, every request for information that seemed out of line. According to Carlos, Patricia had been recording phone calls for weeks before she contacted the FBI. Angela had been fishing for information about other vendors, asking about delivery timelines that weren't public knowledge, requesting cost breakdowns that had nothing to do with our contract. Patricia's smart, Carlos told me during one of our parking lot conversations. She knew something was wrong when Angela couldn't answer basic questions about your original proposal, but kept asking about stuff that wasn't her business. The FBI investigation moved fast once Patricia handed over her evidence. Financial records, email traces, phone recordings, even surveillance footage of Angela meeting with competitors at restaurants around Denver. The whole operation unraveled in a matter of days. Meanwhile, I was still struggling to find work. Maria's medical bills were piling up despite the insurance, and Sophia was looking at community college instead of Colorado State. The stress was killing both of us, watching our 28 years of careful financial planning get destroyed by corporate greed and betrayal. Then, on a Tuesday morning in late November, my phone rang. Unknown number, but something made me answer. Mr. Rodriguez, this is Agent Sarah Kowalski from the FBI's White-Collar Crime Unit. We'd like to speak with you about your former employer and the circumstances surrounding your termination. Would you be available to come in this afternoon? The FBI office in Denver looks exactly like you'd expect. Gray carpet, fluorescent lights designed to make people nervous. But I wasn't nervous. For the first time in 2 months, I felt like someone might actually listen to what I had to say. Agent Kowalski was professional, thorough, and clearly knew her stuff. She walked me through the timeline of my firing, the contract negotiations, everything I knew about Angela Morrison's access to sensitive information. Mr. Rodriguez, based on your account and other evidence we've gathered, it appears your termination may have been connected to an ongoing corporate espionage scheme. Were you ever approached by competitors for information? Never. In 28 years, I never compromised a client relationship or shared proprietary information. That's not how you build a career in this business. She nodded, making notes. And you weren't aware of any suspicious activity before your termination? The only suspicious activity was firing the guy who just brought in the biggest contract in company history. That's when she told me the scope of what they'd uncovered. Angela Morrison wasn't just selling information to competitors. She was running a full-scale operation, skimming money from client accounts, creating fake invoices, manipulating expense reports. The woman Nathan thought represented the future of sales was actually a one-person crime syndicate. And Nathan? He knew more than he'd let on. The FBI had emails showing he'd been warned about irregularities in client accounts, suspicious expense reports, complaints from other employees about Angela's behavior. But instead of investigating, he'd chosen to protect his protégé. We believe Mr. Cross was aware that Ms. Morrison's activities posed a risk to the company's largest accounts. Your termination removed the one person most likely to notice discrepancies in client communications and billing. It was worse than I'd imagined. Nathan hadn't just fired me to make room for Angela. He'd fired me to eliminate the biggest threat to their operation, the experienced guy who knew the clients personally, who would have spotted the inconsistencies, who might have asked uncomfortable questions. What happens now? I asked. We're preparing federal charges for wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Ms. Morrison is cooperating with prosecutors, which means we have detailed information about Mr. Cross's involvement. Cooperating with prosecutors. Angela was throwing Nathan under the bus to save herself. The golden child was about to destroy her mentor. Agent Kowalski handed me her card. We may need additional testimony as the case develops. In the meantime, you should know that several of Pinnacle's clients have expressed interest in working with you directly once this situation resolves. Several clients, including, she mentioned with a slight smile, Patricia Wells at Renewable Energy Dynamics. I drove home feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope, not just for justice, but for the possibility that this nightmare might actually have a decent ending. Maria was waiting in the kitchen when I got back, Sophia doing homework at the table. For the first time since my firing, I had good news to share. The news broke on a Thursday morning in early December. I was making coffee when Maria called from the living room, excitement in her voice for the first time in months. Tom, you need to see this. Channel 7 News. There on the screen was Nathan Cross doing the perp walk in handcuffs, the Harvard MBA who'd built his career on daddy's connections and other people's work, now looking like exactly what he was, a common criminal. The reporter's voice cut through my disbelief. Pinnacle Industrial Solutions CEO Nathan Cross was arrested early this morning on federal charges including wire fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice in connection with a corporate espionage scheme that may have cost competitors millions of dollars. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. After 3 months of unemployment, medical bills, and watching my family's future crumble, justice was finally happening. But it got better. The charges were serious. Wire fraud alone carries up to 20 years in federal prison. Conspiracy adds another 5. And obstruction? That's what really sealed Nathan's fate. The FBI had emails showing he'd been warned about Angela's activities weeks before my firing, but chose to silence the warnings instead of investigating. Angela Morrison was cooperating fully with prosecutors, which meant she was giving them everything. Bank records, communication logs, details about which competitors had paid for information. She'd kept meticulous records of her criminal enterprise, probably thinking it made her look professional. But the real kicker came that afternoon. Patricia Wells called me directly. "Tom, I wanted you to hear this from me personally. Renewable Energy Dynamics is terminating our contract with Pinnacle effective immediately. We're also looking for a new vendor relationship, and your name keeps coming up in our discussions." My name. After 3 months of rejection letters and dead-end interviews, the client I'd worked hardest to win was asking for me specifically. "Patricia, I appreciate that, but I'm not exactly in a position to handle a $1.8 billion contract as an independent consultant." Who said anything about independent? We've been talking to Rockwell Industrial about establishing a Denver-based partnership. They're interested in someone with your experience and client relationships to lead their new Colorado division. Rockwell Industrial, one of the biggest players in renewable energy manufacturing, with a reputation for treating employees like human beings instead of spreadsheet line items. They wanted me to build their Colorado operation from scratch, with equity participation and a salary that made Nathan's insulting severance package look like pocket change. The formal offer came 2 weeks later. Regional Vice President base salary 40% higher than what I'd made at Pinnacle, plus performance bonuses tied to actual results instead of corporate politics. Healthcare that covered all of Maria's treatments without question. A college fund contribution for Sophia that would cover 4 years at Colorado State with money left over. But the best part? My first major client was already locked in. Renewable Energy Dynamics wanted to move forward with their original $1.8 billion manufacturing plan, with me handling the relationship I'd built from day one. Nathan's trial started in March. I testified for 2 hours about the timeline of my firing, the suspicious circumstances, the way Angela had been positioned to take over sensitive client relationships. The prosecution painted a clear picture of conspiracy. Nathan knowingly eliminated the biggest threat to their operation while positioning his accomplice to steal information and money. The defense tried to portray Nathan as a naive executive manipulated by a clever subordinate, but Agent Kowalski's evidence told a different story. Email chains showing Nathan ignored warnings from other employees, financial records proving he knew about Angela's lifestyle changes, calendar entries showing private meetings between Nathan and Angela that weren't documented in company systems. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Nathan got 12 years in federal prison. Angela got 8 years, but could be out in 5 with good behavior for her cooperation. Pinnacle Industrial Solutions was sold to a private equity firm that immediately fired half the workforce and moved operations to Mexico. Meanwhile, my new life was everything I'd hoped for at 52. Rockwell's Colorado division grew from 12 employees to 85 in our first year. We landed 3 major contracts worth over $3 billion combined, including 2 expansions of the original Renewable Energy Dynamics deal. Maria finished her treatment in April. Clean scans, good prognosis, energy levels back to normal. Sophia graduated as valedictorian and started at Colorado State in the fall, majoring in environmental engineering. She wants to work in renewable energy, inspired by watching her dad rebuild his career around sustainable technology. The best part of this whole story, Patricia Wells became more than just a client. She's now a business partner in our Denver facility expansion, bringing her 25 years of industry experience to help build something bigger than any of us could have managed alone. Last month, I got a letter from Nathan in federal prison. 3 pages of self-pity and blame shifting, asking if I could write a character reference for his appeal. I threw it in the trash without finishing it. Some people never learn that actions have consequences, that loyalty matters, that treating people with respect isn't just good ethics, it's good business. Nathan thought he could eliminate experience and replace it with cheap ambition. Instead, he eliminated himself. These days, I wake up excited about work again, building something real, leading a team that values results over politics, working with clients who became partners. At 53, I'm having the best year of my career, proving that sometimes getting fired is the best thing that can happen to you, especially when the people who fired you end up explaining their decisions to the FBI. Karma's funny that way. Takes its time, but it always delivers.